depends on what. All right. Welcome to the Wrench Factor, where we explore the technologies and innovations shaping the future of industrial asset management. Here we discuss the biggest challenges facing frontline professionals, sharing insights from the field and strategies to achieve best-in-class operations. My name is Nick Haas, one of the co-founders of MaintainX, and I'm one of the hosts here of the Wrench Factor. Today in this episode, we're going to break down findings from our 2025 State of Industrial Maintenance Report and really focus on exploring what AI adoption really looks like inside the four walls of a plant today. And I'm excited to have Roshan Satish here on our show today, our incredible AI product lead, incredible resource to be able to share and learn from today. So Roshan, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Nick. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's dig in. You know, our report came out. We had 44% of facilities have said they're implementing some form of AI-powered maintenance solutions today, which is a huge jump compared to just a few years ago. What are you seeing as some of the easy entry points that are most common right now for AI, and what kind of impact are those having on folks?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a notable jump, that's for sure. I think that the AI world is moving quickly in general, across these industries that we work with. But the most common use case that I've seen, the most immediate show of value in particular, is mostly around data capture mechanisms and around consistency of data entry, around meter readings and detected anomalies, and around lightweight forecasts. And when I say that, I mean something as simple as just estimating how long a piece of work will take, how long it would take for a part to be received, just making sure that facilities have a little bit more consistency and a little bit more visibility. And it doesn't take any effort at the end of the day. These AI solutions are showing that an anomaly exists right when a user enters a value, or when they go to purchase something, or when they go to create and organize work. Just getting an AI suggestion that's right then and there is definitely a use case I've heard of as a common one and a good entry point, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I think so many people have this conception AI has to be this very big, abstract, hard thing, but the things you're talking about there aren't, I don't think of robots and the Jetsons when you're saying that, but I think of, wow, that gives people a lot of that doesn't give people, those are the things people don't like doing every day, but they have to do. And so AI's helping make that a little bit easier for them today. And I think that's pretty impressive. What are you thinking? We see a lot of folks are spending most of their time doing reactive work still, and a lot less on preventive, even though 70% of folks that we surveyed are, their stated number one strategy is preventive maintenance. There's a huge opportunity gap there. What are you sort of thinking? How are you imagining AI is going to help take some of that, actually help folks make that pivot towards the strategies that they're trying to work on, whether that's preventive, whether that's condition-based monitoring, or some of the more sophisticated? How is this going to take them away from reactive? What is AI going to do for them today?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to show sequential value, just like you said, up that maturity ladder of different companies with different maintenance schedules and strategies. But getting from 0 to 1 is definitely the hardest part, especially if a facility has been, operating in a reactive way for years and years and have gotten set into that pattern. It's difficult. There's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of different habits that need to be formed, a lot of information that needs to be captured. And at the end of the day, a lot of this is manual work. It's somebody sitting down, trying to digitize different strategies and preventive maintenance plans, building SOPs, assigning work out. And AI starts small in those cases, but helps them gather the right information that they need, helps them structure something more quickly. And especially for larger organizations, just making sure that you can maximize the value from one site or facility to another, I think is huge. Finding, you know, a facility that's already a little bit more advanced and trying to adopt a lot of their strategies by using AI to see what's similar and what's different about your practices versus theirs.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think of like one of our a friend and client of ours that was doing this before AI. He made this shift and this pivot on his own, and it took him a couple of years to really get there. And they were all reactive, and he's been able to so completely flip that plant around. And the way he talked about it was exactly kind of what you described, but all manual. He really looked at the trends. He looked through reports, tried to figure out where the most common break points and what are the things they can actually try to get ahead of. And but it took time, and obviously he had to really. He was working weekends trying to just dig through this and think through it. It sounds like AI is going to help potentially bridge that gap for folks who maybe don't have that time, maybe for folks who don't have that understanding or know-how of even where to start. Is that kind of what you're suggesting is the promise or potential or the reality of AI today?
I would say so. I mean, not completely, that's for sure. I think that AI
Yeah.
is really good at pattern matching, at noticing those trends, especially if you're in a facility that is used to doing reactive work and have been doing that for months or years. It might be, reasonable for a human being to think, oh, what's happened in the last quarter, what's happened in the last year, maybe even, but going beyond that, going across all of their different technicians and employees and the types of work and the machines that they operate on is incredibly difficult. And AI is useful in helping identify those trends and prioritize the things that need to happen first, the highest, criticality of machines, the most important SOPs. That said, though, I mean, the human expertise part is still so vital. There's so much that changes outside of these patterns. There's so many, different anomalies, different just breakage points in those patterns. And a lot of that just comes down to human expertise, actual individuals who have a ton of experience working on those machines or who have been in a company for a long time. And I think AI, still to this day and for the foreseeable future needs that human component as well. And somebody who knows what they're doing to review the output, to infuse their own expertise so that you can actually get to that more consistent point faster.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I mean, look, we have the AI guy here talking about how important humans are. I think that says something interesting, and it's kind of troubling because the top three challenges that folks were facing, the lack of resources. Maintenance is always going to kind of be trying to justify their spend and that battle for resources. That's tale as old as time. But two things that I think are really prevalent and different about what's in today's environment is the aging infrastructure and skilled labor shortage, really tightening the margins on folks. And so, as you're talking about this labor, the human component, it's easy to see why these digital initiatives are stalling. And what do you see? You talk about this knowledge gap and this what the humans know. How is AI going to help offset some of those resource gaps?
That's a great question. I think it's the most pressing one in my opinion as well. Obviously the clock is ticking at the end of the day. A lot of this expertise is buried in people's heads, and those people, retire in many cases, and there's not a great way of capturing all of the things that they know. More bullish on AI in that scenario. I think that the only solution is to try to extract that information, to get them to interact with these AI systems and to capture some of that, so that the word we use all the time is democratized, right? Like make sure that this information is free and accessible to new technicians who don't know what they're doing, who are operating on machines for the first time. But I don't want to undersell how difficult that is either. I think it requires a new habit to be formed. It requires all of this unstructured information to be captured in a way that doesn't feel like extra work for tenured technicians. It's not as easy as sitting them down and asking them, 1,000 questions. It's about making sure that you capture that information point in time, right in those mission critical scenarios, so that you have it forever. And so that a less tenured technician, 6 months or a year down the road, can access the answer, even if, the person who knows what they're doing isn't there at the moment or isn't around anymore.
Yeah. I'm with you on the urgency. I heard a statistic this week that was just like crazy. Every 8 seconds in the United States, someone in manufacturing, in U.S. manufacturing, is retiring.
Wow.
So that knowledge is leaving very quickly. So to your point, there is an urgency to sort of how do we accelerate capturing that, and but you can't just sit them down and Barbara Walters style, ask them 1,000 questions. How are we gonna? What do you think, like, that mechanism and that approach and that strategy for capturing data is going to look like from them? Is it, we can't just pipe into a Neuralink in their brain and pull it out either. Maybe we can. I don't know. You tell me. But are we going to put cameras in and watch them? Are we going to have them talk into devices, tell things? What's that input process that you think is most realistic for folks to start doing? Because we can't wait 20 years for this perfect solution these people are leaving now.
Yeah, I think it comes back to what we were discussing earlier with the entry points and with simple use cases like detected anomalies and simple forecasts. It's more complicated and it's more difficult, that's for sure. But I think that it's equally important to make sure that whatever that AI tool is to capture that information is embedded into an existing workflow. It shouldn't be something completely separate from their day-to-day lives or from the tools that they already use. It has to be part of the things that they're already doing, of what their companies have tasked them with, or with the standard operating procedure of their facility. And there's a lot of different ways of doing that. I think that the most important part, though, is just being workflow embedded. And also, especially for these tenured technicians, making sure that it makes their lives easier rather than harder. So if it replaces, a walkie-talkie conversation, if it replaces a huddle at the end of the day, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
They're going to be much more likely to give it detailed information and to point at it as the primary resource instead of saying, call me when you have an issue. Say, look at the AI knowledge base first, because I've already told it everything I know, because of the fact that it was embedded into my workflow. I was completing work. I added notes. I added context, whether it's photos or text or whatever. And it was valuable to me because I don't have to answer the same question, 100 times now. It's there. It's concrete.
I like that, because that gives value to the folks that are doing it today. As far as, it's not just this pay it forward, build a knowledge library for some unknown future. It's about helping make their life easier in the moment. It's about helping. And I think that makes a lot of sense because, yeah, change management is one of the biggest hurdles to any digital initiative, let alone an AI initiative. And so I think you hit the nail on the head. It's about how do we integrate that into what they're already doing. Makes a ton of sense. And speaking of change management, it's obviously one challenge and risk. But yeah, I spoke about one of the recent Wrench Factor episode with Will from Odin, and about ROI and AI projects and things like that. 25% of the teams have said that budget constraints and implementation costs are barriers to AI adoption. Budget's always blocking folks. They need really hard ROI justification, and AI is in such a nascent stage that there's not a lot of folks out there that have solutions that can show you what the 5-year ROI is on this stuff, especially not with what the cutting edge types of technologies are delivering. So how do you think teams should be considering ROI today? And what would your sort of advice be to them from this technologist perspective, and sort of the intersection that you kind of work in today, where you do understand that world, but also the possibilities of AI?
Yeah, it's a challenging question, honestly. And these AI tools, exactly like you said, do tend to be expensive, and it's difficult looking at it, as a multi-year rollout with a huge upfront cost. My recommendation is a bit twofold on this front. I think that companies should start small and should identify people in their organizations who are willing to be champions and really push adoption of these tools. I think that that's the most difficult part. Is many of them are incredibly powerful, but it's only as powerful as the people who are willing to use it. So I think that a big piece of it is finding people who will ensure that that value is captured day to day, and that their facilities or their technicians or their organization are actually using these tools day to day and building the habit and building that knowledge base that's more important over time. And the second piece is that nothing really changes with AI when it comes to, organizational metrics or what people are tracking when it comes to value. And you're tracking against the same things, whether it's, mean time between failures or time to repair. You should see reduction in that via AI, and you should see
Yeah.
less reactive work and, more consistency over time. And even if it's tricky to capture, I'm confident in, if the first case is solved, if people are actually adopting it across the board, if they're seeing that value, if that knowledge is accessible, and all of these SOPs are standardized and more consistent across their companies, those metrics will change, not overnight, but certainly within that multi-year vision that they have. But I think
Yeah.
it does come down to starting small-ish, just making sure that they have the right people who are pushing for this, and then tracking the same things they always have, and just making sure that they understand the correlation between the two.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it goes back to this sort of tendency to think like, what are we going to do that's going to scale, and how do we deploy this across 10,000 folks? But I think it's also like, what are we scaling? Figure out, like, go learn with those POCs, and think about that scale kind of as that secondary component. Obviously, consider what that's going to look like, but try to see how you can build something that's worth scaling before letting that be the blocker. Makes a lot of sense. I know we're coming up here close to the end, so I want to wrap up with something that I think might be fun for folks who are maybe a little bit closer to the bleeding edge of like all of the cool things that are happening with AI. And we talked about keeping it simple and not trying to overthink the complexity or sophistication of what AI can bring to folks today, and what's possible today. But what's possible, what do you think is going to be like kind of the more exciting possible release for tomorrow? Where do you see AI adding value for some of those more digitally mature folks who do kind of get further down this journey? What should they kind of be excited about as that like North Star for, maybe it's not fully realized today from a technology perspective, but you can kind of, see into the future a little bit about what the art of the possible looks like, and what should executives kind of be like hoping is going to be a reality in, the next couple of years?
Yeah, it's a really fun question, and it's an exciting one for me as well. I mean, long story short, I think there's a lot to be excited about on the horizon, but it all builds on the data foundation of today. I think that that's the challenge, is you do need to adopt consistently. You do need to infuse the system with information, have human beings react with it. And over the course of months or even years, the system not only gets smarter, it's capable of doing more, right, than suggesting. It can actually go do the work. And a big use case that comes to mind and that we've been discussing, extensively is what people are calling agents, which is just an AI system, in my opinion, that can actually do a task, especially a task that has multiple steps. Instead of having 5 different tools at 5 different points in your workflow, you can go task it with looking through your request inbox and generating work orders and assigning them, all with
Instead
procedures
of
and SOPs, instead of
So
doing it
instead of
manually.
just asking it a question and then it tells you what to do, you actually just give it a task to do, like you would like you would a colleague.
Like you would a colleague, or I mean,
Wow.
even today, like an email inbox is a simple answer. I think that it's easy to go through and
Right.
respond to a single email and get a suggestion from Google or whatever, on how to complete your sentence. It's another thing to say, sort through my email inbox, prioritize these for me. When you can,
Yeah.
respond to the things that are simple, and then I'll respond to the rest. I think that that's the idea of an agentic system for manufacturing as well. Are these work orders for the next month actually prioritized appropriately? Do they all have the parts that they need? Do I need to submit, purchase orders? Do I need to reconfigure work because somebody is on vacation? And just kind of saying that, and it'll go through the entire system and make all these changes on its own, and then just give you something to review.
Wow. That's pretty cool. I think I know a lot of people who would love to have that today, but that's part of the fun part. You got to build it first, and you got to build those foundations. Start with those entry level points to get to that. But I think that's
100%.
the type of vision that should be exciting for anyone in this space right now, trying to figure out what does that look like. Um, that's awesome. And that said, thanks you so much, Roshan, for being here today. This has been a fun episode. I love getting
Really
to
appreciate it.
kind of peer into the fog of the mist of the future and see what's coming down the pipe, and also give folks an update on where things are today. So for anyone watching the show here, or whether you're listening to it on a podcast, we've got a link in the comments here if you want to read more about our state of industrial maintenance report and see what else is kind of top of mind for folks today. That Wrench Factor is live every other week, so please subscribe if you haven't. We'd love to hear feedback. And that said, thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.